3 weeks after Jack Morrison first pried up that loose floorboard under his staircase, his family received an invitation that would have seemed impossible just a month earlier. Commander Zix-9 appeared on their device informally, invited the Morrison family to visit the Zephyrian mothership that was positioned in orbit above Earth. The commander explained that they would be among the first humans to see their planet from space and to experience the technology and culture of an advanced galactic civilization. The invitation was extended not just to the Morrison family, but to all of the families around the world who had passed the test and proven themselves ready for contact with alien civilizations. Jack learned that more than 700 families from every continent would be brought aboard Zephyrian ships over the next few weeks for cultural exchange visits that would help prepare humanity for membership in the Galactic Confederation. On the morning of their scheduled visit, the Morrison family gathered in their living room around the alien device that had changed their lives forever. Commander Zix-9 appeared on the holographic display and told them that a transport beam would bring them to the Zephyrian ship in just a few minutes. He assured them that the process was completely safe and that they would be returned to their home whenever they wanted to come back. Linda was nervous about leaving Earth, but she was also excited about the opportunity to see things that no other human had ever experienced. Amy and Ben could hardly contain their enthusiasm about visiting an alien spacecraft and meeting beings from another world. Jack felt a mixture of excitement and responsibility, knowing that his family was representing not just themselves but all of humanity in this historic moment. Helen had been invited to join the Morrison family on their visit, and she was more excited than any of them about the opportunity to study an alien civilization firsthand. She had brought a notebook and camera to document everything she saw, though Commander Zix-9 had told her that the Zephyrians would provide her with much more advanced recording equipment once she was aboard their ship. When the transport beam activated, the Morrison family experienced a sensation unlike anything they had ever felt before. They seemed to dissolve into particles of light and then reassemble moments later in a large, bright chamber aboard the Zephyrian mothership. The transition was so smooth and painless that they barely realized it had happened, until they found themselves standing on what was clearly an alien spacecraft. The interior of the Zephyrian ship was beautiful beyond anything the Morrison family had imagined. The walls seemed to be made of some kind of crystal that glowed with soft, warm light, and the floors were smooth and comfortable to walk on despite appearing to be made of metal. Everything was designed with curved, flowing lines that made the space feel organic and natural, rather than mechanical and cold. Commander Zix-9 was waiting to greet them, and seeing him in person was both exciting and reassuring. He looked exactly as he had appeared on their device, but his presence was warm and welcoming, in a way that made them feel like honored guests, rather than alien specimens being studied. The commander was accompanied by several other Zephyrians who were introduced as scientists, cultural specialists, and ship officers who were eager to meet their human visitors. The first stop on their tour was an observation deck where the Morrison family got their first look at Earth from space. The sight of their blue and green planet hanging in the blackness of space brought tears to Linda's eyes and made all of them feel both humble and proud to be human. Commander Zix-9 pointed out the locations of other Zephyrian ships that were stationed around Earth, and he explained how the protective fleet had been guarding their planet for centuries. Ben was fascinated by the ship's technology, and the Zephyrian engineers were happy to explain how their faster-than-light engines worked and how they generated the energy needed to power such a massive vessel. The technology was far beyond anything humans had developed, but the Zephyrians assured him that humans would eventually learn to build similar ships once they became members of the Confederation and had access to advanced scientific knowledge. Amy was most interested in learning about Zephyrian culture and society, and she spent hours talking with alien anthropologists who had been studying human civilization for decades. She was amazed to learn that the Zephyrians had detailed knowledge of human art, music, literature, and customs, and that they had great respect for human creativity and emotional expression. Helen was given access to the ship's vast library of information about galactic civilizations, and she spent her time learning about the hundreds of different species that belonged to the Confederation. Each species had contributed something unique to galactic culture, and she began to understand how humans would fit into this amazing community of intelligent beings. Jack found himself in conversations with Zephyrian leaders about Earth's future role in galactic affairs. He learned that humans would be invited to participate in Confederation councils, where decisions were made about trade, exploration, and peaceful resolution of conflicts between different species. His background in construction and his practical approach to problem-solving were seen as valuable assets that would benefit the entire galactic community. During their 3-day visit to the mothership, the Morrison family met humans from other countries who had also been invited aboard Zephyrian vessels. They shared stories about their own discoveries of alien devices and their experiences communicating with Commander Zix-9 and other Zephyrian leaders. Despite coming from different cultures and speaking different languages, all of these human families shared the same sense of wonder and responsibility about humanity's new role in the galaxy. On their final day aboard the ship, Commander Zix-9 made a formal announcement that would change the course of human history. He declared that based on the results of the test and the positive response of families around the world, the Galactic Confederation was officially inviting humanity to become a member species. Earth would be granted all the rights and protections of Confederation membership, and humans would be welcome to participate in galactic civilization as full partners. The commander also announced that Jack Morrison had been selected to serve as one of Earth's first civilian ambassadors to the Confederation. His practical wisdom, ethical character, and ability to work well with people from different backgrounds made him an ideal representative for humanity in galactic affairs. Jack was honored by the appointment, though he was also somewhat overwhelmed by the responsibility of speaking for his entire species. As the Morrison family prepared to return to Earth, they were given communication devices that would allow them to stay in contact with their Zephyrian friends and to coordinate Earth's integration into galactic society. They were also told that they would be able to return to the mothership whenever they wanted, and that their children would be welcome to study at galactic universities and explore other worlds when they were older. The transport beam brought them back to their living room, where everything looked exactly the same as when they had left 3 days earlier. However, the Morrison family knew that nothing would ever be the same again. Their simple home repair project had led to the most important discovery in human history, and their ordinary suburban house had become the center of humanity's entrance into a larger universe. As they sat around their kitchen table that evening, sharing a meal and talking about their incredible experience, Jack looked at the loose floorboards that still needed to be properly repaired and smiled. That creaky third step on his staircase had led to humanity's first steps into a galaxy full of friends, allies, and opportunities that would benefit generations of humans to come. Sometimes, he reflected, the most extraordinary journeys begin with the most ordinary problems, and the most important discoveries are made by people who are simply curious enough to look beneath the surface of their everyday lives. While the Morrison family was learning about the Zephyrian test and Earth's potential membership in the Galactic Confederation, similar discoveries were happening in homes around the world. The alien devices that had activated simultaneously were revealing themselves to families in every country, and each family faced the same choice that would help determine the future of all humanity. In a small apartment in Tokyo, an elderly man named Kenji Tanaka found a device hidden behind his kitchen stove when he was trying to repair a gas leak. Kenji lived alone since his wife had died 3 years earlier, but he was not afraid when the device activated and began showing him holographic images. Instead, he carefully studied the symbols and tried to understand what they meant, just like the Morrison family had done. When Commander Zix-9 appeared on his device and began speaking in perfect Japanese, Kenji listened politely and asked thoughtful questions about the Zephyrian civilization and their intentions for Earth. On the other side of the world, in a farmhouse outside Manchester, England, a young single mother named Emma Collins discovered a device buried in her vegetable garden when she was planting tomatoes. Emma had been struggling to raise her 2 young children after her husband left them, but she had always been curious about science and astronomy. When her device activated, she gathered her children around it and explained to them that they were probably looking at technology from another planet. Her calm educational approach impressed the Zephyrian observers, who noted that she treated the discovery as a learning opportunity rather than something to fear. In São Paulo, Brazil, a retired teacher named Carlos Mendoza found a device hidden in his basement when he went down to look for Christmas decorations. Carlos had spent 40 years teaching science to elementary school students, and his natural instinct was to observe and document everything he saw. He took detailed notes about the device's behavior and tried to understand the mathematical patterns in the alien symbols. When Commander Zix-9 contacted him, Carlos asked if he could share this amazing discovery with his former students, because he believed that children deserved to know that the universe was full of intelligent life. Each family that discovered a device responded differently, but the Zephyrians were looking for specific qualities in human behavior. They wanted to see curiosity instead of fear, cooperation instead of competition, and wisdom instead of greed. Most of the families who found devices passed this test, which surprised the Zephyrian observers who had expected humans to be more aggressive and selfish based on their observations of human governments and military organizations. The Morrison family learned from Commander Zix-9 that the test results from around the world were overwhelmingly positive. Out of more than 800 families who had found devices, only a handful had reacted with fear or had tried to use the technology for personal gain. The vast majority had responded exactly as the Morrison family had, with careful observation, thoughtful questions, and concern for the welfare of all humanity, rather than just themselves. However, not every human who encountered the alien technology made the right choice. In a mansion in Beverly Hills, a wealthy businessman named Richard Stone found a device in his wine cellar and immediately began planning how he could use it to make money. He contacted his lawyers and business partners before the device even finished activating, and he began making plans to patent the alien technology and sell it to the highest bidder. When Commander Zix-9 appeared on his device, Stone demanded to know what the aliens would pay him for exclusive access to Earth's markets. In Moscow, a government scientist named Dr. Viktor Petrov discovered a device in his apartment and immediately reported it to his superiors in the military. Within hours, the device was surrounded by soldiers and scientists who tried to dismantle it and study its components. Dr. Petrov argued that the technology should be used to build weapons that would give Russia an advantage over other countries. When the Zephyrians tried to communicate through the device, the Russian military jammed the signal and tried to reverse engineer the communication system. Commander Zix-9 explained to the Morrison family that these negative responses were exactly what the Zephyrians had expected from some humans, and they were the reason why the test was necessary. A species that would try to weaponize or commercialize first contact with an alien civilization was not ready to join a confederation of peaceful worlds. The families and individuals who failed the test would find that their devices stopped working, and they would have no further contact with the Zephyrians. The families who passed the test, however, would be invited to participate in humanity's introduction to galactic civilization. Jack asked Commander Zix-9 what this would involve, and the alien leader explained that selected humans would be brought aboard Zephyrian ships to learn about other worlds and civilizations. They would serve as ambassadors and translators, helping other humans understand what membership in the Galactic Confederation would mean for Earth. Amy asked if their family would be separated, and Commander Zix-9 assured her that families who wished to stay together would not be forced apart. The Zephyrians understood the importance of human family bonds, and they would accommodate the needs and preferences of their human partners. Some families might choose to travel to other worlds together, while others might prefer to remain on Earth and help with the transition to galactic citizenship. Ben wanted to know what would happen to the humans who had failed the test, and Commander Zix-9 explained that they would not be punished or harmed. They would simply continue living their lives as they always had, unaware that Earth had joined a larger community of worlds. The Zephyrians believed that every species included individuals who were not ready for galactic contact, and these individuals would be allowed to live peacefully while their more advanced fellow citizens explored the galaxy. Helen asked about the timeline for Earth's integration into galactic society, and Commander Zix-9 told her that the process would take many years and would be carefully managed to avoid disrupting human civilization. The first step would be cultural and scientific exchanges with a few selected human families, followed gradually by larger groups as more humans became comfortable with the idea of alien contact. Eventually, the existence of the Galactic Confederation would become public knowledge, but this would happen only when human society was ready to accept it. The commander also explained that humans would have the right to refuse membership in the Confederation if they chose to do so. The test was designed to identify humans who were ready for galactic contact, but even those humans could decide that they preferred to keep Earth isolated from alien civilizations. This would be a disappointment to the Zephyrians, who believed that humans had great potential as members of galactic society, but they would respect humanity's right to choose its own path. As the Morrison family learned more about the choices facing humanity, they began to understand the enormous responsibility that had been placed on the shoulders of ordinary people like themselves. Their decisions and the decisions of families like them around the world would determine whether Earth joined a community of advanced civilizations or remained alone in the galaxy. It was a responsibility that none of them had asked for, but all of them were beginning to realize that they were exactly the kind of people who should be making these decisions for all of humanity. On the 7th day after first contact, Commander Zix-9 revealed information that completely changed how the Morrison family understood Earth's place in the galaxy. The commander told them that the Zephyrians had not just been observing Earth for the past 2,000 years, but had actually been actively protecting human civilization from threats that humans had never even known existed. The revelation began when Ben asked Commander Zix-9 about the strange aircraft that people around the world had been seeing in the sky. The commander explained that those ships belonged to the Zephyrians and their allies, and they had been maintaining a protective perimeter around Earth for centuries. What humans were seeing now was just a small fraction of the galactic fleet that had been secretly defending their planet from hostile alien species that wanted to conquer or destroy human civilization. Jack asked what kind of threats Earth had faced, and Commander Zix-9 showed them holographic displays of several different alien species that had attempted to invade Earth over the past 500 years. The first attempted invasion had occurred in 1543, when a species called the Ravagers had tried to establish mining colonies on Earth to harvest the planet's natural resources. The Zephyrian fleet had intercepted the Ravager ships and destroyed them before they could reach Earth's atmosphere. The most recent threat had occurred just 18 months ago, when a militant species known as the Dominion had launched a reconnaissance mission to Earth in preparation for a full-scale invasion. The Dominion believed that less advanced civilizations should be enslaved and used as labor forces for more powerful species. Their scout ships had been observing Earth's military capabilities and planning attack strategies when Zephyrian interceptors had driven them away from the solar system. Commander Zix-9 explained that Earth's location in the galaxy made it particularly attractive to hostile species because it was rich in water and had a diverse ecosystem that could support many different forms of life. The planet's relatively weak defenses also made it seem like an easy target for species that wanted to establish colonies or mining operations. Without Zephyrian protection, human civilization would probably have been destroyed or enslaved centuries ago. Linda asked why the Zephyrians had chosen to protect Earth instead of letting other alien species take over the planet. And the commander told her that the Galactic Confederation had a policy of protecting developing civilizations that showed potential for peaceful membership in galactic society. The Zephyrians had been monitoring human development for thousands of years, and they had identified humans as a species worth protecting and eventually inviting to join the Confederation. However, the commander also revealed that the protection had come at a significant cost to the Zephyrians and their allies. Defending Earth had required maintaining a permanent military presence in the solar system, and several battles with hostile species had resulted in Zephyrian casualties. The Confederation had invested enormous resources in protecting a planet whose inhabitants did not even know they were being defended, all because they believed that humans would eventually become valuable members of galactic civilization. Helen asked how the devices hidden in human homes fit into this protection system, and Commander Zix-9 explained that the devices served multiple purposes. They were communication tools that would allow the Zephyrians to make contact with humans when the time was right. But they were also part of a planetary defense network that helped monitor threats and coordinate protective efforts around Earth. The commander showed them a holographic map of Earth with thousands of small lights scattered across every continent. Each light represented a device like the one in the Morrison house, and together they formed a network that could detect alien activity anywhere on or near the planet. The devices had been sending information to the Zephyrian fleet for decades, providing early warning of potential threats and helping coordinate defensive responses. The families who had been chosen to house the devices were not selected randomly, Commander Zix-9 explained. The Zephyrians had carefully studied human behavior and had identified individuals and families who possessed the qualities that would make them good partners in defending their own planet. These families had been monitored for years to ensure that they were trustworthy, intelligent, and committed to the welfare of their communities and their planet. Amy asked if this meant that her family had been under alien surveillance their entire lives, and the commander admitted that this was essentially true. However, he assured her that the monitoring had been limited to assessing their character and ensuring their safety. The Zephyrians had not interfered in their daily lives or invaded their privacy beyond what was necessary to evaluate their suitability as partners in the defense of Earth. The commander also revealed that the Morrison house, like hundreds of other homes around the world, had been built on sites that were specifically chosen for their strategic importance in the planetary defense network. The location of their house provided optimal coverage for monitoring alien activity in their region, and the previous owners of the house throughout its history had all been selected for their character and reliability. This revelation helped explain some things that had always puzzled the Morrison family about their house. Jack had often wondered why the previous owner had sold the house to them for such a reasonable price, when similar homes in the neighborhood were much more expensive. Linda had always thought it was strange that every family who had ever lived in their house had been known in the community for being helpful and trustworthy people. Now they understood that these patterns were not coincidences but were the result of careful planning by alien observers. Commander Zix-9 told them that similar revelations were being shared with families around the world who had passed the test and proven themselves worthy of knowing the truth about Earth's situation. These families would now become humanity's partners in defending their planet and preparing for eventual membership in the Galactic Confederation. The devices that had been hidden in their homes would become command centers for coordinating Earth's integration into galactic civilization. The commander also explained that the protective fleet around Earth would gradually become visible to all humans as the planet transitioned to galactic citizenship. Eventually, the existence of alien civilizations and Earth's membership in the Confederation would become public knowledge. But this would happen slowly and carefully to avoid causing panic or social disruption. Ben asked what would happen to the hostile alien species that had been trying to attack Earth, and Commander Zix-9 told him that most of them would be discouraged from further aggression by Earth's new status as a Confederation member. Species that continued to threaten Earth would face the combined military might of all Confederation members, which was more than enough to deter even the most aggressive civilizations in the galaxy. As the Morrison family absorbed this incredible information, they began to understand that their discovery of the alien device had revealed not just the existence of friendly aliens, but the fact that Earth had been part of a galactic community for much longer than anyone had realized. Their planet had been protected, guided and prepared for this moment by civilizations that cared about humanity's future and believed in human potential for greatness. As the days passed and the Morrison family continued their conversations with Commander Zix-9, they learned more about why humans had impressed the Zephyrian observers so much. The commander explained that in the thousands of years the Zephyrians had been testing different species across the galaxy. They had never encountered a civilization quite like humanity. Most species that the Zephyrians had tested had failed in predictable ways. Some civilizations were too aggressive and immediately tried to capture and weaponize the alien technology. Others were too fearful and destroyed the devices rather than risk contact with unknown beings. Still others were too selfish and tried to keep the technology secret, so that only a few individuals could benefit from it. The Zephyrians had tested more than 200 different species over the centuries, and fewer than 30 had been invited to join the Galactic Confederation. Commander Zix-9 told the Morrison family that humans were unique in several ways that made them ideal candidates for galactic citizenship. First, humans had demonstrated an unusual combination of curiosity and caution. When families around the world found the alien devices, most of them were brave enough to investigate and try to understand what they had discovered, but they were also wise enough to proceed carefully and seek help from experts and friends. The commander was particularly impressed by how many human families had involved other people in their discoveries. The Morrison family had brought in Helen because of her expertise in languages and symbols. The elderly man in Tokyo had contacted his grandson who was studying engineering. The single mother in England had called her neighbor, who was a retired scientist. This pattern of cooperation and consultation had appeared in family after family around the world, and it showed the Zephyrians that humans valued knowledge and community over individual gain. Another quality that impressed the Zephyrians was humanity's concern for ethics and consequences. When the devices activated and families realized they were in contact with alien beings, most of them immediately began asking questions about what this would mean for all humans, not just for themselves. They worried about whether the contact would be good or bad for their planet, and they wanted to make sure that any decisions they made would benefit everyone, rather than just their own families. Commander Zix-9 shared examples of how other species had reacted to the test, and the differences were striking. When the Kaldorians had discovered the devices 300 years ago, each family that found one had tried to keep it secret and use it to gain power over other Kaldorians. The result was a series of wars that nearly destroyed their civilization before the Zephyrians intervened. When the Thoraxians found the devices, they were so afraid of alien contact that they destroyed all the devices and spent the next century building weapons to defend against an invasion that never came. The Zephyrians had also been impressed by humanity's diversity of perspectives and approaches. In some civilizations, all individuals thought and acted in very similar ways, which made their societies stable, but also made them less adaptable and creative. Humans, on the other hand, approached problems from many different angles and came up with solutions that surprised even themselves. This diversity of thought would be valuable in a galactic confederation that included hundreds of different species with different ways of thinking. Helen asked Commander Zix-9 about the Zephyrian civilization and how they had developed their peaceful approach to galactic relations. The commander explained that his people had learned through bitter experience that aggressive expansion and conquest led only to destruction and suffering. Thousands of years ago, the Zephyrians had been a warlike species that conquered other worlds and enslaved less advanced civilizations. This approach had eventually led to a devastating war that nearly wiped out all intelligent life in their part of the galaxy. The survivors of that ancient war had formed the Galactic Confederation, based on principles of peaceful cooperation and mutual respect. They had learned that a galaxy where different species worked together was far more prosperous and stable than one where species fought each other for resources and territory. The Confederation now included species that were thousands of years more advanced than others, but they all contributed something valuable to the galactic community. The commander told them that humans reminded the Zephyrians of themselves during their early years as members of the Confederation. Humans had the same combination of curiosity, creativity, and ethical concern that had made the Zephyrians successful partners with other galactic civilizations. The Zephyrians believed that humans would bring new ideas and perspectives that would benefit all members of the Confederation. Jack asked what humans could possibly offer to civilizations that were thousands of years more advanced than Earth, and Commander Zix-9 smiled at the question. He explained that technological advancement was only one measure of a civilization's value, and often not the most important one. The most advanced species in the galaxy had learned that wisdom, creativity, and moral development were far more valuable than advanced weapons or faster spacecraft. The commander gave them examples of contributions that newer members had made to the Confederation. A species called the Mindari had developed forms of art and music that no other civilization had imagined, even though their technology was relatively primitive. The Velthans had created new approaches to education and child development that had been adopted throughout the galaxy. The Zorinians had developed philosophical and ethical frameworks that had helped resolve conflicts between much more advanced civilizations. Humans, Commander Zix-9 believed, would contribute their unique approaches to problem-solving and their strong sense of community and family bonds. Human families like the Morrisons had shown qualities of loyalty, cooperation, and ethical reasoning that were rare even among advanced galactic civilizations. The way humans formed emotional connections with each other and worked together to solve problems would be valuable lessons for species that had become too focused on individual achievement or technological progress. Amy asked if humans would be able to learn the advanced technologies used by other galactic civilizations, and the commander assured her that knowledge sharing was one of the primary benefits of Confederation membership. However, he explained that the most important things humans would learn would not be technical, but philosophical and social. Humans would learn how to maintain their unique culture and values while also participating in a diverse galactic community. The commander also told them that the Confederation had been waiting for a species like humanity for a long time. Most of the civilizations that had joined the Confederation in recent centuries had been very old and stable, with well-established traditions and ways of thinking. Humans, as a younger species, would bring energy and new ideas that could help the Confederation continue to grow and evolve. The diversity of human cultures and the human capacity for change and adaptation would be especially valuable as the galaxy faced new challenges in the coming centuries. On the fourth day after the device activated, something extraordinary happened that would change everything the Morrison family thought they knew about their discovery. Jack was having his morning coffee and watching the news reports about the mysterious aircraft that continued to appear around the world, when the device in his living room began making a soft humming sound that none of them had heard before. Ben was the first to reach the device, and he saw that the holographic display had changed completely. Instead of showing star maps or technical diagrams, it was displaying what looked like a face. The face was clearly not human, but it was not frightening or threatening. The being had large, gentle eyes and skin that seemed to shimmer with a pale blue color. When Ben called for his family to come quickly, the face turned toward him as if it could see him through the display. Linda, Jack, Amy, and Helen all gathered around the device as the alien face began to speak. The words came through the device in perfect English, though the voice had a strange musical quality that made it clear the speaker was not human. The being introduced itself as Commander Zix-9 of the Zephyrian Exploration Council, and it thanked the Morrison family for activating the communication device that had been placed in their home many years before. Commander Zix-9 explained that the Zephyrians had been observing Earth for more than 2,000 years, watching as human civilization developed and grew. The devices that had been found in homes around the world were not just communication tools, but were part of a test that every intelligent species in the galaxy had to pass before they could be invited to join the Galactic Confederation of Peaceful Worlds. The commander told them that most species failed this test because they reacted to the discovery of alien technology with fear, greed, or aggression. When other civilizations found devices like the one in the Morrison house, they typically tried to weaponize them, destroy them, or use them to gain power over other members of their species. The Zephyrians had tested hundreds of worlds over thousands of years, and very few species had shown the wisdom and curiosity that humans were demonstrating. Jack asked what made humans different, and Commander Zix-9 smiled in a way that seemed remarkably human, despite his alien features. He explained that when the devices activated 4 days ago, the Zephyrians had been monitoring the responses of all the families who discovered them. Instead of panicking or trying to sell the technology or turn it over to their governments for military purposes, most of the families had reacted with curiosity and caution. The commander specifically praised the Morrison family for the way they had handled their discovery. Instead of keeping it secret or trying to profit from it, they had involved Helen, a scholar who could help them understand what they had found. They had documented everything carefully and had considered the implications for all of humanity rather than just for themselves. This kind of thoughtful, ethical response was exactly what the Zephyrians hoped to see from a species that might be ready to join the galactic community. Amy asked why the aliens had been hiding and watching Earth for so long instead of just making contact openly. And Commander Zix-9 explained that open contact with a less advanced civilization could be dangerous for both species. If the Zephyrians had revealed themselves before humans were ready, it could have caused panic, wars, or the collapse of human civilization. The test with the devices was designed to identify humans who were mature enough to handle the knowledge that they were not alone in the universe. Ben wanted to know how the devices had gotten into their house and the other houses around the world, and the commander told him a story that amazed the entire family. The devices had been placed by Zephyrian agents who had been living on Earth disguised as humans for centuries. These agents had carefully selected families that showed the qualities of wisdom, kindness, and curiosity that the Zephyrians valued. and they had arranged for the devices to be hidden in homes that would be passed down through generations of good people. The Morrison house had been built on land that was specifically chosen for its location in the global network of devices, and every family that had ever lived there had been selected because of their character. The Zephyrians had been watching the Morrison family for years before the device activated, and they had been impressed by the way Jack and Linda raised their children and treated their neighbors and community. Helen asked Commander Zix-9 about the other families around the world who had found devices, and he told her that similar conversations were happening in hundreds of homes on every continent. The families who had passed the initial test by responding to their discoveries with curiosity rather than fear were now being invited to serve as Earth's first ambassadors to the galactic community. These ordinary people, chosen for their character rather than their wealth or power, would help decide humanity's future in the galaxy. The commander explained that the alien spacecraft that had been observed around Earth were not invasion ships, but were exploration and communication vessels that had been waiting for this moment for decades. The Zephyrians and their allies had been protecting Earth from hostile alien species that had wanted to conquer or destroy human civilization before it could mature. Now that humans had passed the test, Earth would be under the official protection of the Galactic Confederation. Jack asked what would happen next, and Commander Zix-9 told him that the transition would be gradual and carefully managed. The families who had discovered devices would be invited to visit Zephyrian ships to learn about the galaxy and the confederation of peaceful worlds that humanity could now join. There would be cultural exchanges, sharing of scientific knowledge, and eventually trade relationships between Earth and other worlds. The commander assured the Morrison family that Earth would not be forced to change its governments or way of life, and that humans would be free to choose how much they wanted to participate in galactic affairs. Some humans would choose to travel to other worlds, while others would prefer to stay on Earth and continue living their lives as they always had. The important thing was that humanity now had choices and opportunities that had never existed before. As the conversation continued, the Morrison family began to understand that their simple home repair project had led to one of the most important moments in human history. They were not just witnesses to first contact with an alien civilization, but they were active participants in determining the future relationship between Earth and the galaxy. Jack looked around at his family and realized that their ordinary suburban home had become the center of an extraordinary new chapter in the story of humanity. 2 days after Ben accidentally activated the alien device, Jack Morrison woke up to the sound of helicopters flying over his house. He looked out his bedroom window and saw military aircraft circling his neighborhood at a low altitude, which had never happened before in the 20 years his family had lived there. Linda was already awake and looking worried, and she told him that the helicopters had been flying around since early morning. Jack went downstairs to check on the device, which had been displaying different holographic images for the past 2 days. The star maps and technical diagrams kept changing, and Helen had been coming over every day to study them and take notes. When Jack looked at the device that morning, he noticed that it was displaying something new. Instead of the usual star charts, it was showing what looked like Earth from space, with small dots of light appearing at various locations around the planet. Amy came running into the house from outside, where she had been talking to their neighbor, Paul Baker. She told her family that Paul had seen strange lights in the sky the night before, and so had several other people in the neighborhood. The lights were not like airplanes or satellites, and they moved in ways that seemed impossible. Amy said that people were posting videos of the lights on social media, and the videos were being shared thousands of times before they suddenly disappeared from the internet. Ben had been monitoring news websites and social media since the device activated, and he told his family that similar reports were coming from all over the world. People in different countries were seeing strange aircraft in the sky, and governments were not providing any explanations for what was happening. Some news reports mentioned that military bases around the world had been placed on high alert, but officials would not say why. Helen arrived at the Morrison house around noon, and she looked more serious than they had ever seen her before. She told them that she had been contacted by colleagues at universities in other countries, and they had reported similar discoveries to what the Morrison family had found. Families in England, Japan, Australia, and several other countries had found identical devices hidden in their homes, and all of the devices had activated at exactly the same time. Jack asked Helen what she thought this meant, and she explained her theory. She believed that the devices had been placed in homes around the world many years ago, possibly decades or even centuries ago, and they had been waiting for the right moment to activate. The fact that they all activated simultaneously suggested that they were part of a coordinated plan by whoever created them. The strange aircraft that people were seeing in the sky were probably connected to the activation of the devices. Linda asked if they should be worried about their safety, and Helen admitted that she did not know. The beings who created the devices were obviously far more advanced than humans, which meant they could probably do whatever they wanted to Earth if they had harmful intentions. However, the fact that the devices had been hidden in family homes rather than government buildings or military bases suggested that the aliens might be more interested in ordinary people than in world leaders or soldiers. That afternoon, a black sedan pulled up in front of the Morrison house, and two people in dark suits got out and walked to the front door. Jack assumed they were government agents, and he was prepared to refuse to let them inside or to answer their questions. However, when he opened the door, the woman in the suit introduced herself as Major Patricia Williams from NORAD, and she asked if she could speak with his family about their recent discovery. Major Williams was not what Jack had expected a military officer to look like. She was a tall woman in her 40s with short brown hair and a calm, friendly manner. She told Jack that she was not there to take the device away or to arrest anyone, and she asked if she could explain what the government knew about the situation. Jack was suspicious, but Linda invited Major Williams inside because she wanted to know if the government had any answers about what was happening. Major Williams sat down in the Morrison family living room and told them a story that none of them had expected to hear. She explained that the United States military had been aware of these devices for more than 50 years, but they had never been able to activate or study them because they only responded to the families in whose homes they were hidden. The government had a list of more than 300 homes across America where similar devices had been discovered over the years, but this was the first time any of them had become active. She told them that similar devices existed in countries all over the world, and every government that knew about them had been waiting for the day they would activate. The military had been tracking the strange aircraft that appeared after the devices turned on, but the aircraft were using technology that was far beyond anything humans had developed. The aircraft were not attacking or threatening anyone, but they were clearly scanning the planet and gathering information. Major Williams pulled out a tablet computer and showed the Morrison family radar images of the alien spacecraft. There were dozens of them positioned around Earth, and they were all maintaining specific distances from the planet and from each other. The pattern of their position suggested that they were creating some kind of network or grid around the entire world. She explained that the military was prepared to defend Earth if the aliens showed any hostile intentions, but so far they had not made any aggressive moves. Jack asked Major Williams why she was telling them all of this instead of keeping it secret like the government usually did with alien-related information. She explained that the situation had changed when the devices activated, because it was clear that the aliens wanted to communicate with the families who had found the devices, not with governments or military forces. The devices only responded to ordinary people, and they seemed to ignore attempts by government scientists or military personnel to study them. Helen asked Major Williams if the government had any idea what the aliens wanted, and the Major admitted that they did not know. However, she said that the fact that the aliens had waited so long before activating the devices suggested that they had been observing Earth and waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. The timing might be significant, though no one was sure what the aliens were waiting for or what they were planning to do next. Major Williams told the Morrison family that they were free to continue studying their device, and she asked them to share any information they discovered with the government. In return, she promised to keep them informed about what was happening around the world with the other devices and the alien spacecraft. She gave Jack her phone number and told him to call her immediately if the device did anything new, or if the aliens tried to make direct contact. After Major Williams left, the Morrison family sat around their kitchen table and tried to process everything they had learned. Their small home repair project had somehow become part of a global event that involved alien visitors and governments around the world. Jack looked at his family and realized that their lives would never be normal again, and they had no idea whether that was a good thing or a terrifying thing. Jack Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stared at the old wooden staircase in his living room. The third step had been making that awful creaking sound for months now, and his wife Linda reminded him about it every single day. She would point at it during breakfast and say the same thing over and over again about how someone was going to fall through it someday. His daughter Amy always skipped over that step when she ran upstairs to her room, and his son Ben had started using it like a musical instrument, pressing on it to make different sounds that annoyed everyone in the house. Jack had been putting off this repair job because he thought it would be simple. But nothing in his old house was ever simple. The house was built in 1952, and every time he tried to fix something, he discovered 3 more problems hiding underneath. He had learned this lesson the hard way when he tried to replace a bathroom faucet last year, and ended up having to redo all the plumbing in the upstairs bathroom. Linda still brought up that disaster whenever she wanted to remind him that home repairs always cost more money and time than he expected. On this Saturday morning, Jack finally decided to tackle the staircase problem once and for all. He gathered his tools from the garage and spread them out on the living room floor. He had his hammer, screwdriver, drill, level, and a box of screws that he hoped would be the right size. Linda brought him a cup of coffee and wished him good luck, but he could tell from her voice that she expected this project to turn into another expensive mess. Jack started by examining the loose step carefully. When he pressed on it, the whole piece of wood moved up and down like it was barely attached to anything. He got down on his hands and knees and shined his flashlight under the staircase to see what was causing the problem. What he saw confused him completely. The wooden supports under the step looked fine, but there was a strange gap between the step and the floor underneath that should not have been there. He decided to remove the loose step completely so he could see what was going on underneath. As he pried up the wooden board with his crowbar, he expected to find rotten wood or broken supports like he had found in other parts of his old house. Instead, his flashlight beam reflected off something that looked like metal. Jack blinked several times and looked again, thinking his eyes were playing tricks on him. The metal surface was smooth and shiny, almost like a mirror, but it had strange marks carved into it that looked like symbols or letters from a language he had never seen before. Jack called out to Linda, who was in the kitchen doing dishes. She came into the living room wiping her hands on a dish towel and asking what was wrong now. When Jack pointed his flashlight at the metallic surface under the staircase, Linda gasped and stepped backward. She asked him what that thing was, but Jack had no idea. The metal looked brand new, not old and rusty like everything else in their house. The symbols carved into it seemed to glow slightly in the flashlight beam, which made no sense at all. Amy and Ben heard their parents talking in excited voices and came downstairs to see what was happening. Amy was 17 and always acted like she was too cool to care about anything her parents did. But when she saw the strange metal surface, her eyes got wide and she forgot to act bored. Ben was 15 and loved anything that seemed like a mystery or adventure. He immediately got down on the floor next to his father and started asking a million questions about where the metal came from and what the symbols meant. The Morrison family spent the next hour staring at their discovery and trying to figure out what they should do about it. Linda wanted to call someone, but they could not decide who to call. Jack suggested calling his brother who worked in construction, but Linda pointed out that his brother would not know anything about mysterious metal objects with strange symbols. Amy suggested calling the police, but Ben argued that the police would just think they were crazy and probably would not even come to look at it. Jack decided to remove more of the floorboards to see how big the metal surface was. As he pried up each wooden board, more of the strange metal became visible. The surface was about 4 feet wide and 6 feet long, and it was covered with rows of symbols that seemed to form patterns. Some of the symbols looked almost like numbers or mathematical equations, while others looked like pictures of stars or circles. The metal itself seemed to be made of something that Jack had never seen before. It was not aluminum or steel or copper or any other metal he recognized from his construction work. Ben noticed that some of the symbols seemed to light up when he moved his hand close to them, which made everyone step back nervously. Linda said they should cover it back up and pretend they never found it, but Amy argued that they had to find out what it was. Jack felt torn between curiosity and worry. Part of him wanted to explore this mystery, but another part of him wondered if they had stumbled into something dangerous. As the afternoon wore on, the Morrison family took turns examining the metal surface and trying to make sense of the symbols. Jack took pictures with his phone, thinking that maybe someone at the hardware store or the library might recognize the markings. Linda made lunch, but nobody felt very hungry because they were all thinking about the strange discovery under their staircase. Amy posted some of the pictures on social media to see if any of her friends had ever seen anything like it, while Ben started drawing copies of the symbols in his notebook. By evening, the Morrison family realized that their simple staircase repair had turned into something much bigger and more mysterious than any of them had expected. Jack carefully placed the wooden boards back over the metal surface, but he knew that their lives had just changed in a way that none of them could understand yet. As they sat around the dinner table that night, they could not stop talking about what they had found and what they should do about it. Little did they know that their discovery would soon change not just their lives but the future of all humanity. Jack Morrison could not sleep that night, and neither could anyone else in his family. Every few hours, one of them would get up and walk to the living room to make sure the wooden boards were still covering the mysterious metal surface under the staircase. Linda kept saying that maybe they had all imagined the whole thing, but they all knew that was not true. The symbols Jack had photographed were still on his phone, and the drawings Ben had made were still in his notebook. The next morning at breakfast, Linda suggested they call her friend Helen Carter, who taught languages at the university downtown. Helen was the smartest person Linda knew, and she had studied ancient languages and symbols from all over the world. If anyone could make sense of the strange markings they had found, it would be Helen. Jack agreed that calling Helen was a good idea, especially since she was someone they trusted who would not think they were crazy. Helen arrived at the Morrison house around noon on Sunday, carrying a bag full of books and a laptop computer. She was a small woman in her 50s with gray hair and thick glasses, but she had more energy than most people half her age. Linda had told her over the phone that they had found something unusual under their staircase, but she had not given her many details. When Jack removed the wooden boards to show Helen the metal surface, her reaction was completely different from what the Morrison family had expected. Instead of gasping or stepping backward like they had done, Helen knelt down and stared at the symbols for a long time without saying anything. She pulled out a magnifying glass and examined each marking carefully, occasionally making notes in a small notebook she always carried with her. After about 20 minutes, she sat back on her heels and looked up at the Morrison family with an expression they had never seen on her face before Helen told them that the symbols were not from any human language or writing system she had ever studied, and she had studied hundreds of them during her career. The markings seemed to follow mathematical patterns that suggested they were created by an advanced intelligence, but they were definitely not made by any civilization on Earth. She asked Jack if he could remove more of the floorboards so she could see the entire metal surface, because she suspected there might be more symbols that would help her understand what they were looking at. As Jack pried up more wooden boards, Helen continued examining the newly revealed symbols with her magnifying glass and making notes. She pointed out that some of the markings looked like star charts or maps of the sky, while others appeared to be technical diagrams of some kind. The metal itself was unlike anything she had seen before, and it seemed to be in perfect condition despite being hidden under the staircase for who knows how many years. Ben had been watching Helen work, and he was fascinated by her methodical approach to studying the symbols. He was taking computer programming classes at school, and he liked the way Helen was treating the symbols like they were a code that needed to be broken. When Helen took a break to eat the sandwich Linda had made for her, Ben asked if he could take some pictures of the symbols with his phone to study them later. As Ben was positioning his phone to get a good picture of one section of symbols, his finger accidentally brushed against the metal surface. The moment his skin made contact with the metal, something incredible happened. The symbols he had touched began to glow with a soft blue light, and then more symbols all across the surface started, lighting up in a pattern that moved from one end of the metal to the other like a wave. Everyone in the room froze and stared as the metal surface came to life in front of their eyes. The glowing symbols pulsed in rhythm like a heartbeat, and then a section of the metal began to rise up from the floor. As it lifted higher, they could see that it was some kind of panel or screen. The surface of the panel shimmered and then displayed what looked like a three-dimensional map of stars floating in the air above it. Helen whispered that they were looking at a hologram, which was technology far more advanced than anything humans had invented yet. The star map rotated slowly, showing different sections of space that none of them recognized. Then the display changed to show what appeared to be technical diagrams of machines or vehicles that looked nothing like anything built on Earth. The shapes were smooth and curved in ways that seemed impossible, and they seemed to be powered by energy sources that Helen said she could not identify. Jack asked what they should do, and Helen told them that they needed to be very careful. She explained that the device had obviously been designed to respond to human touch, which meant that whoever made it had intended for humans to find it and activate it. The question was whether that was a good thing or a bad thing. She suggested that they should document everything they could before they touched anything else, because they had no way of knowing what other functions the device might have. Amy suggested that they should call the government or the military, but Helen shook her head and said that might not be a wise choice. She explained that if the government took control of the device, the Morrison family might never see it again, and they might never learn the truth about what it was or where it came from. She recommended that they study it themselves for a while longer before they decided whether to involve authorities. As they watched the holographic display, Helen pointed out that some of the technical diagrams seemed to show Earth from space, which meant that whoever created the device knew about their planet and had been studying it. The implications of this discovery were starting to sink in for all of them. This was not just some old artifact or piece of technology that had been lost and forgotten. This was evidence that Earth had been visited by intelligent beings from somewhere else in the universe. Ben asked if the device might be trying to communicate with them, and Helen said that was exactly what she was thinking. The patterns of light and the changing displays seemed too organized and purposeful to be random. It was as if the device was waiting for them to figure out how to respond to it, like it wanted to have a conversation with them, but was waiting for them to learn how to speak its language. The Morrison family spent the rest of the day watching the device and documenting everything it showed them, but they were all thinking the same thing that none of them wanted to say out loud. If this device was really created by beings from another world, then their simple home repair project had just become the most important discovery in human history.